Hey everyone, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving straight into a pretty explosive new investigative report just published by the watchdog group EyesOnIce.net. We're going to be taking a really close look at a government program called the UAC Safety Verification Initiative, or SVI for short. Now, on paper, this sounds totally standard, right? Just a routine government effort to check in on vulnerable folks. But as we dig into the actual data, the procurement databases and the operational realities that this report lays out, well, a very different picture starts to emerge. So let's break down exactly how this program operates using the hard data from the investigation itself.
To really set the stage here, I want us to start with a pre-provocative question that this report basically forces us to ask. What happens when a humanitarian program is outsourced to bounty hunters? That right there is the core mystery of the whole SVI program. Normally, when you hear the phrase safety verification, you probably picture, social workers, right? But the Eyes on Ice investigation suggests that the people actually knocking on these doors are, well, they're far from your typical child welfare professionals.
$200 million. Let that sink in for a second. That is the staggering amount of money the Department of Homeland Security and ICE have awarded in these indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity contracts for this one initiative. So we're not talking about some tiny pilot project here. This is a massive, highly funded federal operation with a footprint across the entire country. And honestly, when a federal agency pumps $200 million into something, it absolutely demands our attention.
Because there's this really stark contrast between what this program is supposedly doing and what the report claims it's actually doing on the ground. The stated goal, if you look at the official federal paperwork, is child welfare. It's pitched as this humanitarian measure designed to protect former unaccompanied children from things like labor exploitation, trafficking, and domestic abuse. But the operational reality? According to the Eyes on Ice procurement analysis, this thing functions primarily as a privatized surveillance and intelligence gathering apparatus. It's essentially described as a deportation pipeline operating completely under the guise of a routine wellness check.
Section 1. A $200 million shadow manhunt.
Now, the Eyes on Ice Master Tracker does a brilliant job of illustrating just how massive this operation really is. They built this directly from federal procurement databases, places like usaspending.gov and sam.gov, and they tracked 18 different prime contractors who scooped up these massive awards. Look at that vast, complex web of task orders and multi-million-dollar ceilings. It's a huge paper trail, and it reveals a logistical enterprise that is just staggering in scale.
Section 2. Security firms over social workers.
Okay, so who exactly are these vendors? The numbers here are just wild. 66% of these contracts went directly to private security and fugitive recovery firms. We are literally talking about armed guards, asset protection companies, and bounty hunters. Then another 22% went to data collection and skip tracing networks, which are basically commercial debt collectors and background investigators. Out of the whole pie, only a meager 12% of these vendors actually specialize in social services, shelter management, or child welfare. So you have a situation where the vast majority of these supposed welfare checks on highly traumatized youth are being carried out by armed guards and debt collectors, not licensed social workers.
Which naturally leads us to ask, right? How are these contractors evaluated, and more importantly, how are they paid? To really understand how this system functions on a day-to-day basis, we have to look at the underlying business model. What is actually driving these private firms to do this work?
And here is where it gets really interesting. Because the report points out some incredibly perverse financial incentives baked right into these contracts. Unlike your traditional social service grants that reward, say, long-term stability or actual positive welfare outcomes, the SVI uses volume-based task orders, meaning vendors get paid based on the sheer volume of addresses they can verify. Plus, they get speed-to-completion bonuses, and get this, they actually face financial penalties for prolonged casework. So these contractors are literally financially disincentivized from taking the time to, connect a vulnerable young adult with medical aid or a pro bono lawyer. They are purely motivated by speed and quotas to rapidly confirm a location and fire a report straight back to ICE. Oh, and by the way, federal specs don't even mandate that these field workers hold any social work licenses at all.
Section 3. The surveillance pipeline.
So who are they looking for? The target demographic here is highly specific, 18 to 21-year-olds. Specifically, former unaccompanied minors who have recently aged out of legal protections. See, once these individuals turn 18, they lose the statutory protections that are mandated under the Trafficking Victims Protection Reauthorization Act, or the TVPRA. By zeroing in on this exact age group, the SVI effectively bypasses humanitarian standards, shifting these young adults straight into standard civil immigration enforcement priorities. It's a very calculated demographic targeting.
And when you look at the SVI contract task order pipeline, it is super revealing. It starts up at the top when the order is issued, right, which leads to the private security or skip tracer doing the actual door knock. But follow the data flow. The intelligence they gather, verified addresses, employer details, contact numbers, the identities of literally everyone living in the house, all of that is logged directly into ICE systems of record. From there, the pipeline just branches out. It leads to collateral arrest of sponsors, the disruption of legal applications, and ultimately accelerated removal orders. As the report lays out, this isn't a welfare check framework at all. It's a full-blown intelligence pipeline.
Section 4. Silencing witnesses and whistleblowers.
Now here is a really critical piece of the puzzle. A significant percentage of the youth targeted by these unannounced inspections are actually active witnesses, plaintiffs, or victims in pending federal and state cases. We're talking cases involving serious labor exploitation and human trafficking. I mean, just imagine being a key witness in a major workplace abuse case and suddenly, completely unannounced, an armed or uniformed private contractor shows up at your front door. The report documents this massive chilling effect. This coercive environment absolutely deters critical testimony. Out of sheer fear of being detained, many youths are coerced into abandoning their special immigrant juvenile status petitions, or they're just forced to accept an accelerated voluntary departure before their family court proceedings can even wrap up. It systematically throws a wrench into the justice system.
Section 5. Collateral damage and consequences.
One of the most glaring policy implications the report highlights is how these unannounced door knocks manage to circumvent Fourth Amendment warrant requirements. And how do they do it? Through mistaken consent. When these contractors show up at a house, undocumented sponsors or family members frequently let them right in, fully believing that they're just local child welfare workers sent to check on the young adults. They have absolutely no idea that they are voluntarily granting residential entry to federal immigration intelligence gatherers. It's a huge loophole.
I actually want to read this quote directly from the Eyes on ICE report because I think it perfectly hits the nail on the head regarding their core conclusion. It says, "This operational structure converts purported welfare visits into residential surveillance operations, repeatedly triggering collateral arrests." Because think about it, all that data they vacuum up, who lives there, where they work, their phone numbers, it goes straight to ICE. And that frequently leads to the arrest of non-target family members and housemates who had absolutely nothing to do with the original verification order. The data gathering basically casts a net over the entire household.
Which leaves us with this final, really profound question to consider today. If a child welfare program operates as a surveillance and deportation apparatus, who is it truly protecting? When humanitarian work gets outsourced to fugitive recovery firms that are incentivized by speed and volume, the very people the program claims to safeguard end up becoming the targets. It's a highly complex and obviously very concerning system, and understanding the mechanics behind it is really the first step in asking the right questions. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope this deep dive into the source material helped clarify the operational realities of the SVI for you. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll see you in the next one.